That is terrifying. All right, well today we are working on my workshop itself. We built this building about a year ago and we've been slowly chipping away at the projects, and today is the start of the biggest project we have to do on this thing, something we have wanted to do from the very start. Today we are going to be starting on the loft build. This started out as an older building that was built with the house. It was enclosed in the back, open in the front. And I tried to go about the normal channels, permitting, of closing in the front, so I had a fully enclosed shop, not a small enclosed area with a carport. However, the permit process just kept getting deeper and deeper, and they kept asking for more and more, and it got to the point where it was not going to be feasible to close the shop in, so we decided to tear it down and build a whole new building, which is what we did. Now, since we were tearing it down and building a new one, it was kind of the time to make changes. So I would have loved to go bigger on the physical footprint. I knew I was gonna grow into this and I was gonna need and want more space. However, with the way the permitting works and the zoning works, I can't go any larger than this really in footprint. So we were kind of stuck to this size, plus the slab was already here. So we decided to go up. We went with 16-foot walls, which is the tallest walls that we could do. And that gives us space for storage upward, but we have to build it. So the plan from the start was to build a big loft back here so that we have storage upwards. And that is what we are finally gonna be starting on. It's taken a long time to plan this out, and I've debated different ways we could do it. And we came up with kind of our final plan, and I'm very excited about it. I think it's gonna be perfect, because not only do we need storage for shelves and small parts and things like that, we need more car storage. We are completely out of room. We're always playing the car shuffle game of pulling one car out, pull another car in, pull two cars out. It's a nuisance. So for the start of our loft project, we have this. This is a 3-car stacker lift from Unpacking. We've been calling it the car vending machine. It literally looks like a vending machine. We're gonna have 3 cars high of lift space right in the center, and then we're gonna build the loft on each side and tie it all in together. So that way we have a loft portion there, a loft portion there, cars in the middle, and we can use the lift to get heavy things up there. So very excited about this plan. I think this is gonna be perfect to get really the most out of the shop space we have. So that being said, I picked it up from the freight company. It was a bit of a struggle, wasn't without its challenges, but we've got it all here. It's time to start getting it unpacked so we can get the trailer out of the way and get to work putting this together. All right, guys, before we get too deep into today's video, I wanted to talk to you about today's video sponsor, Factor. So I've been using Factor for literally years now, and I am so in love with this. I really can't say enough good things about it. I recommended it to a ton of friends who have all loved it. I've had viewers reach out to me who've tried it after seeing it in the videos and are like, this is the best thing ever. I mean, it really combines all of my favorite things all into one unit. I get to save time on going to the store, doing all of that nonsense. I get to save money on takeout, and I get to eat quality food while doing both of those first two things. So Factor is a meal service. They deliver fresh, never frozen meals right to your door that are ready in 2 minutes. And it is good quality food. It's carefully curated, you know, the flavors and everything, the combinations. It's good tasting food that's actually good for you, and it is quick. That is really the biggest thing for me. The fact that I don't have to sacrifice the quality of what I'm eating and eat, you know, absolute junk food to save time. I get to save time while eating well, while saving money. It's literally a win-win-win. You know, time is something I never seem to have enough of. This time of year during fall, you know, we're going at it nonstop. There's events all the time, or there's always a new project. We always feel like we're behind. So cutting all that time out for food, it helps a lot. Between Factor and HelloFresh, I mean, it pretty much covered all the way across the board. And fortunately, Factor is now owned by HelloFresh. So whichever one kind of fits your needs and you're looking to try, I've got a discount code for you. So that being said, if you are interested in trying it out for yourself firsthand, don't take my word for it, try it out. Go to factor75.com or click the link down below and use code TaylorJost50 to get 50% off your first box. It's a great deal. great way to try it out and just see what you think firsthand. So that being said, speaking of projects, speaking of time, we don't have a lot of it, and we do have a lot of projects. We don't have a lot of time, a lot of projects. We need to get to work. So the first step is to get this thing unstrapped. I had to get pretty creative with my strap job here. These are super long and they were sitting on the dovetail already, so I did not want them to slide off the back, so I had to strap them forward, strap over them, strap the box on the top. But we made it home without an incident, without anything flying off. I'm always very cautious when I'm carrying things like this on the trailer to do as many straps as I can and make sure nothing's going to fall off my trailer. I do not want to be that guy. So once that was done, it's time to make room. The ironic thing here is what we're going to be building is to make more room in the shop because we are out of room in the shop. But in order to assemble it and put it together, we've got to make room in the shop. So it's kind of one of those things where it's got to get worse before it's going to get better. So we start moving some things around. We get the Monte Carlo out. We get the Miata pushed back under the lift, get our table moved, start sweeping up all the dirt and grime that's been under there because everything's been sitting in the same place for a while. Start moving the welding table out of the way. We've basically got to clear this entire back area out. Not only is this where the lift is going, but we're going to need a lot more room than just where the lift is going to be able to assemble it. So the top box is pretty light. It's all aluminum panels. So we're able to just kind of take this apart and unload them by hand. However, we're going to have to get a little bit more creative with the lift packages themselves because they are long and they are very, very heavy. So the first time we did this when we got my 2-post lifts is we used an engine hoist and dollies, and it was a bit of a process, but we got them off. But now that we have the 2-post lifts and they're assembled, we can use the 2-post to lift the new stacker lift. So we get a strap over it, over the lift arms. We get them lifted up just enough to drive the trailer out from under them, set them down on dollies, and repeat the process. So it's a little sketchy, but I mean, hey, it's not sketchy if it works, right? There's really not a good way to do this without a forklift or some piece of equipment, which we do not have. So we're having to, we got to get creative and come up with a way to do it. We might as well use the equipment at our disposal, which is the 2-post lift. Also, check out Raldo's crispy, brand new Jibber Jabber shirts. So we just got a new shipment of those in stock, as well as the standard Garage Built Co. shirts. So if you're interested in supporting the channel and supporting Raldo and Josue, because they've been doing a killer job handling all the merch stuff, go to garagebuiltco.com, see if there's anything that piques your interest. Like I said, we've got a bunch of stuff in stock now, including more magnetic koozies. Those things go really fast because they are super handy. Check it out if you're interested. So once we add them off the trailer, that's really the biggest hurdle here. That is the most stressful part because they are heavy and everything is all in one. Now we can strip them down and put all the pieces together. We've basically got to sort everything out, determine what we have, what we need, where everything needs to go, because this stuff's heavy. You don't want to move it more than once. So the ideal scenario is we take everything one time, move it where it's going to need to go, and we don't have to move it again. So we start with the posts, which you would think are the heaviest part of this process, but they might not be. The runways could give them a run for their money. So we get all the packaging material out of the way, and then it's time to get the runways down on some dollies. So we use a 4-jack. We get them jacked up so that way we can drop them onto the dollies as a package unit. But we need to split them apart because 1, they're going to have to come apart anyway, but 2, we need the stuff that's in them. So a lot of the smaller pieces are packaged inside the runways, and we need to make sure that we have everything we need and that everything is sorted and organized. So this is the last step of getting this all spread out and set up to be installed. Officially got everything out and unboxed, if you could call it that. This is probably the biggest unboxing. We got everything out and spread out. That's step 1. So we got our power side drive on portion, our non-power side drive on portion. These are our cross beams with our pneumatic locks. These are our posts. These are our ladders for the locks. Those are our cross beams front to back. And then this is all the different hardware, more hardware, bunch of cables, hydraulic hoses, air lines, more hardware, instructions, sway, some more instructions.
Big instructions.
Yeah, but we have been going through the instructions, and I would say if you're gonna do a lift install yourself, it is important to go through the instructions first before you do anything. Because you can very easily be 5 steps down the line and find out you needed to do something at step 1 or step 2, and you can't do it now because you're 5 steps in. I did that when I first installed this lift. But in the process, we're realizing we are probably gonna need some piece of machinery to make this easier. Plus, who can say no to a good excuse to borrow or buy or rent a forklift? Forklifts are cool. All right, we are back at it. We just got this thing, old R2. It is a walkie stacker. So we have what we need, hopefully, to assemble this thing. It's time to start putting it together. So step one, it's definitely a 3-person job and definitely needs a forklift.
Correct.
It's time to finally get back to work on this lift. Hopefully this thing hangs in there and gets us through this project at least. Are we ready? Ready, Freddies? So for as much as we tried to avoid having to move everything a second time, we're gonna have to move everything a second time. But this time we've got R2, and instead of back-breaking labor, we get to put R2 to work, even though it's probably more efficient to just lift the stuff. You know, when you get a new toy, you gotta enjoy it, you gotta use it. So the first step is to assemble the back lift post. So we need to get these slide blocks on the crossbars. These are basically what center the crossbars in the lift post, in the beam, and then there's a ladder bar that slides in behind them, and that's what the locks go into. So of course we got to use R2. We probably didn't need to use R2. These aren't that heavy, and we could have probably very easily just pushed them in by hand, but again, when you got R2, you know, you got to put it to work. Why not? So we get the first crossbar in, slid all the way down. We got our second crossbar in and slid all the way down. And then it's time to put the ladder bars in. We're basically almost completely assembling this before we lift it into place. One, it's a lot easier to do this while it's here on the ground and you're not, you know, having to use a ladder to try to get all the way up to the top and put something in. But also, we basically need to use the crossbars as our beam to lift from. So I checked the height on R2 to see how high it could go before I cut my wood stops. So these are going to go in the top of the post so that the crossbar won't go any higher, and we can lift with a little bit better center of gravity, and it works out because R2 can't lift as high as the top of this post. So it's kind of a win-win scenario doing it that way. So once the ladder bars are in, we need to get the top plates on and snugged up. All of this stuff has to be adjusted later to level everything out. So we're just snugging everything up for now. And then it's time to lift this thing into place. This is the first test of R2, and it's passing with flying colors. It lifted this thing, no problem, no hesitation. So now it's really just a matter of getting it across the shop and into place in exactly where we need it and all squared up. It's always a bit nerve-wracking moving something around this tall, you know, hoping that it doesn't topple over, but it's definitely a lot easier than doing this by hand, where once you start lifting, you are committed. So already very glad we got R2. This thing is coming in super handy. So we need to get it as close to the roll-up door as possible, but not so close that it interferes. We need to still be able to open and close the door. So it's a fine line. We want it tucked back there, but we want to be able to use the door. So we decided to check and make sure that the roll-up door still works before we commit to mounting this thing.
Flamethrower, hold on. Let's
you
go.
have more? Yeah. Grab the broom too. Go grab
Dude, it's got the A.
I know, that's why I'm gonna try not to smash it.
Oh.
But we need to be ready to smash it. You got the broom ready?
Sweep it out. Sweep. Where is it?
It's right here. It falls on us.
The panic ensues.
Ah! He was in there, dude.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so that's worst case scenario.
Right.
Including spider. Waiting for another one.
Back beams are up. The front beam should end somewhere right around here. So we still got a good bit of room. You imagine the front of the car is there. One of the big reasons I wanted to do this is this shop layout leaves a lot of empty space. You kind of just have to have stuff in the middle, and I hate that. So this kind of takes up a lot of that wasted space, and then is gonna become a back wall here and a back wall there where we can put stuff up against it, because it's not just in the middle of the shop. So I'm pretty pumped. It feels good to see it up there. How do you feel?
Pretty tall.
It's tall. But we got it up and R2 put in work. So before we take R2 out of here to start moving these posts around, we need to at least get an anchor and an anchor. So we basically just had to repeat the process from the first set of posts for the second set of posts. We need to assemble them on the ground and then get them lifted up into place. So we get our cross beams set up, we get our slide blocks on, we use R2 to slide them in place, and this time we realize it's just easier to just slide them in by hand, but we'll have plenty more uses for R2 throughout this project. We can bear to do some of the work with our hands, you know? So we get the crossbars on, then we get our ladder bars slid in. It's one of those things when you're building anything, you know, you're working on a car's suspension, you do one side and then you do the other, something like this where you're building the first set of posts and the second always goes way quicker. You kind of learn the tips and tricks and how everything needs to be set up, you know, like these stop blocks for the upper platform and getting those tied in. So once we were done with that, it was time to rescue our wood stop blocks that keep the crossbar from going too high out of the first set of posts. So we made a little platform for R2. Why use a ladder when R2 is right there? This thing is proving to be incredibly versatile. So we get those pieces of wood down, get the top plates bolted in, and basically get everything set up to lift this thing just like we did the first one. Now, the idea here is that we get this thing as close to in position as possible so we don't have to move it around a ton when it's upright. Now, obviously, that's a little bit tricky because you don't know exactly where it's going to land when you lift it. It's going to pivot some, but we're going to try to get it as close as possible. You know, this thing's over 13 feet tall. You don't want to be moving it around too much with it all stood up in the air. So once we had it all set up and right where it needed to go, we made some adjustments to our stop blocks to make sure everything was nice and tight, minimal play, and it's time to lift it.
Try to roll forward instead.
So once we had it up and roughly where it needed to go, it's about trying to square it up with the other one. If this thing is off by a couple of inches one direction or another, the platforms aren't going to operate correctly. So we measured it diagonally, we measured it front to back, and we worked with leveling it out and trying to get it close. Now we're going to do our final leveling with shims and things like that, but we want to be as close as we can before we drill these anchors so that we don't end up with the anchors in a weird spot. Now these base plates are slotted, which is helpful because it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect when you drop that anchor in, but we'd like for it to be. That would be the ideal scenario. So we go ahead and put 2 anchors in every post. That way it's stable for us to go ahead and continue assembling the rest of the main frame, but we also have a little wiggle room if things are not where we thought they were when the time comes to put the platforms on. So the next thing we need to do is basically drop these crossbars down to where we want them to assemble it. We don't want to have to lift the platform 8-9 feet in the air to put it on and install it, so we're going to lift the crossbars up with R2, hold the locks, drop it down into place, and that way everything is where it needs to be for assembly. So again, this is one of those things where I thought we could get away with not using any sort of equipment or forklift, but it's proven time and time again that R2 was a good addition to the team. It's been very helpful with this project.
Yeah. It's just put the forks in as much. Don't slide. There's maximum pivot on the fork.
Everyone got their hard hats on? All right, we got both uprights up. We've got our cross beams where we want them for our install. So this is our top cross beam, bottom cross beam. We got our first platform, first runway here. This is the non-power side, so it's a little bit simpler. So we're gonna start with this side, top one, bottom one, and then this side. That's the plan, at least. So if we can get these on without too much drama, the rest is all just a little tedious, running cables and air hoses and things like that. So we are getting there, one step at a time. You guys ready?
Ready to show you. Let's go.
So once we got the first one done, we had the process down packed. It was pretty easy. The most difficult part is just angling it to get it up into place, but even that was a piece of cake. So we got the first side done, the non-power side. Now we're moving on to the power side. So these have the hydraulic ram in there. They have these sheaths that you have to remove since we're dropping the platform straight down. So it's a bit more of a process, and they're a bit heavier. So it's a little bit, a little bit more concerning. You definitely don't want to drop one of these, but other than that, it's pretty much the same process and it goes really smooth. We had limited room to work with in here because we didn't want to take everything out of the shop, and even with that limited space, this went pretty easy. This is definitely one of the more concerning parts of the project that I knew was going to be challenging to do physically if we didn't get any sort of forklift. So I'm really glad we did for this alone, because I'm not really sure if there would have been a good way to lift these things into place otherwise. But with R2, piece of cake, get them all dropped in and we're ready to go. All right, we've got our platforms on our runways. The heavy lifting is complete. The bulk of the lift is assembled. Super, super happy with that. It really went about as smooth as I could have expected it to, really. We didn't hit any snags, any weirdness. It all went smooth. Thanks to R2. Shout out to R2, freaking employee of the month. This thing's been in the industry since '06, but new to the team, great addition. MVP. R2 definitely just paid himself off already just in this one project. So now that we've got the whole frame assembled, runways, uprights, cross beams, the next step is we basically got to install all of our cables. So we've got 4 per platform. We're cruising along though. Big old lift. Let's take one more look at it. Woo! Can't wait to build the loft up to the sides of it. All the storage. So putting the cables in is a bit of a tedious process. The routing can get kind of convoluted on some of these longer ones. You really got to pay attention to which way they go and get everything into place, but we basically just pass them through, run them up over the slack lock, run myself up on R2, tie them into the top, and move on. So really a pretty simple project, all things considered. Definitely a little time consuming, and I was kind of dreading it at first just because I know there's a lot of cables and they go a lot of different directions, but all in all, just like everything else in life and on this project in particular, once you get the first couple done, the rest of them just kind of fall into place. Everything's pretty simple. So we work on getting them finalized, and then we go around and kind of even everything out so the slack's about the same. We'll have to do this once the lift's operational, but we wanted to get them close so that way, one's not way more slack than the other one, trying to even everything out. So once we got that done, it was time to move on to the power unit. You're going to get sick of hearing me talk about R2, but it is always a challenge to put these power units on, even with 2 people, where you're trying to hold it in place and get the bolt and the nut in. Having R2 to just lift this thing up, priceless. All right, we've got all of our cables in and routed. That's all finished up. Pretty easy, all things considered. So those are all done. We've got them all roughly evened out. We won't be able to finalize evening everything out until we're able to lift and lower the platforms. So that's really what's next. A lot of the big stuff is out of the way. We've got the motor on, that's done and dusted. The electrician came today, dropped this conduit down, boom, wired up the motor, so it ties off to the motor here. And then this is coming from our breaker for our welding table. So this was originally dropping down right in the middle of this because that's where the welding table was, but obviously it can't go there now. So it's gonna go over here. So we've got that in here, that's ready to go. So we're all sorted on the electrical side of things. So all we have left is the hydraulic side of things and the air side of things. So we're gonna have 2 hydraulic lines going to our ram in each platform. We've got to route hose to all 4 corners of the lift, and we also need to bring air down to our post here. Just like our electrical, we basically need to do the same thing for air so that we have an air supply here to tie into all of this. So that's what I'm gonna work on next. So we're basically gonna tee off it here, follow this conduit down, put our air drop, and then start routing our air lines through all the platforms. Once we're done with that, in the hydraulic lines, in theory, it should just be fill it with fluid and see if it works. That being said, we are close. We are close. I cannot wait to see this thing moving, and I definitely cannot wait to see it with 2 cars on it and a car under it. I've been daydreaming about this ever since I decided to do this, and I'm ready to see it in action. But to see it in action, I got to get back to work. So I'm going to quit jibber jabbering and get back to it. So since we already have air lines routed throughout the shop front to back, this is a pretty simple process. We basically just got to tee into our main supply line and then route over and down the post. Now this stuff's really nice to work with because it bends really easily, but it is a little bit tricky when you're trying to do it with the whole row on it, because obviously I don't know how long it needs to be until I route it, so I don't want to cut it short, but then you're kind of fighting the roll trying to fall off the ladder, or in this case off the pallet of R2. So it's a little bit tricky, but we managed to get it bent and turned and curved to where it starts heading down the post and then start securing it down with the conduit. We decided that was going to be the cleanest way to do this. That way we don't have to drill any more holes for any more P-clamps, and it kind of matches and just splits off at the very end to our drop. We also added an 8th MPT port to our drop instead of using the big 1/2-inch MPT port. So we'll have that available as another drop if we want it. You know, we can put a quick connect there and then be able to hook an airline up right there. So once the air feed was done, it's time to finish up all of the plumbing on the platform. We've got hydraulic feed lines to the rams. We've got hydraulic return lines from the rams. We've got the airline finalization to get those all tied together and back to the feed. There's a lot of odds and ends, a lot of plumbing with this, but we get it all knocked out and this thing is fully plumbed up. All right, well, all of our plumbing is done. We've got our air feed coming in here. So it comes from the tank, tees off that feed forward there, boom, follows the conduit down nicely to our drop here. We still have this port to add an airline, a reel, whatever we want here if we want to later. And then we've got our feed going down into our regulator. We've got a shutoff valve here so we can cut air to the whole lift if we need to and leave air to everything else. And then it comes up to this push button, and this is what's gonna actuate the actuators when we wanna release the locks. Boom, just like that. And then we've got our lever here to select the platform, our platform level lever. It's a tongue twister, but to select which platform we want to raise and lower. Our hydraulic lines, all those are routed, all those are plumbed. So the plumbing is all done. The air, the hydraulic fluid, the wiring, everything's done. All that's left to start running this thing up is to put fluid in it, bleed it, and run them up. However, before we do that, we still have a couple structural things to do. We need to finalize our anchors and we need to finish squaring up the posts. We squared them when we put those anchors in, but we wanted to wait to do the final squaring and shimming until we got everything all together so we could do it all as one unit. But once we get this wrapped up, we got to put the crossbars on, and then we should be able to kick the tires, light the fires on this thing. So I'm excited. We are close. We are so close. So I'm going to quit jibber jabbering and get back to it. So I've done this process on my other two lifts, but without the use of any sort of equipment. And I got to say, it's a lot easier with a piece of equipment, especially if you're working by yourself. You can get a lot more leverage pushing on the top of the post than down on the bottom of the post, and you can just leave the machine there to hold it in place while you get down there and do the shims and snug up the anchors. So I just started working my way around this thing, leveling out all 4 posts, getting everything squared up and squared away. So it was a little tricky to get to some of them and push them in the direction I needed, but we managed to get it done. Everything's squared up. All of our anchors are in. So now it's time to add the hydraulic oil. This is the last step, is to put hydraulic fluid in it, set the air regulator for the airlocks, and then prime up the system and see if we get movement. So this is really the moment of truth. All the hard work comes down to this. So we get the lower platform moved and it's time to try out the upper. Forgot to tighten that one. Well, we did tighten it, but we loosened it to reorient the line and never retighten it. So the one downside to using R2 as a ladder is the fact that you need 2 people to operate it. Since I was working solo this time, I had to get a little creative, set the platforms at a height that I could just climb up there and adjust the ladder. So what we're working on is adjusting the lock ladders, basically. So that way, when they're set down on the locks, the platforms are level. We want them to be level so the cars don't try to roll away. It's kind of important step. Nailed it. So basically, we've got to get the platforms to where they're level on the lock. We have adjustment in the ladder bars, but then we'll also need to get them level when they're raising by adjusting the cables. Make sure all corners are pulling the same. But yeah, we got them level on the locks. So, or this one. We're gonna do the same thing for the bottom one. That'd be easier because it's closer to the ground. Should have left this one a little lower so I don't have to climb up here like a jumbo gym, but. So the last big piece of the structural puzzle is to put the front to back support braces in. So these tie the front and rear posts together and should help square everything up. They just go on as the last step because otherwise they're kind of in your way and you're kind of fighting them when you're trying to do everything else. So we went ahead and got the bottom ones on. The top ones are a little trickier. Got to kind of climb up there and use R2 maxed out to get the support beam up there. But once we got that done, those are all bolted together. It's time for the last bit of odds and ends. So we've got our center plates that basically complete this as a full platform. There's also these plastic pieces that go underneath the runways, so that way everything isn't exposed. You don't have the ram and the cables and all of that stuff exposed. And then we could drop both of them down and put the top platform center panels on and start adding things like the ramps and the stops. So both platforms have stops at the end, the far end, and the ramps essentially act as stops once they go up. So that's just in case you don't do a good job securing your car and it tries to slide off. So Josue started working on finishing adding the safety springs and the covers, and I started working on moving everything around in the shop so that we can get cars on it. All right, the lift is officially done. We've even got our little cover panels on. Those look snazzy. But the lift is complete. It's done.
And dusted.
That's right. That's right. I want to put the Miata, you can't even see it back here, on the top, but it's kind of got a fuel line leak right now. We need to put cars on it. That's the last step. Put cars. I want to see this thing with cars on it. Maybe we'll try to push the Miata on. Maybe R2 can help out. A little sketchy. Okay, we're gonna try to put cars on it. Moral of the story. But the lift is complete. It's done. I got my welding table moved back over here. There's a lot of organizing that needs to happen. There's still stuff everywhere. Still like a bomb went off, but we're gonna move just enough stuff around to try out the lift. So we've got a rough idea of where we want to put everything, but we really need the cars kind of out of the way and everything in its final position before we determine for sure what's gonna go where. So we got some stuff moved out of the way. We got the Miata rolled out. Now we could push this thing on, or we could try to fix this fuel line so we can drive it on. So we just did a quick removal of the top, and it's time to try to drive this thing on. Especially because I'm wearing boots. I'll come down here.
Looks like
That's wild.
That's scary.
That is terrifying.
It's not even in the frame anymore.
Well, Miana's up there. Hello.
hello from down here.
All right, it's 8-6's turn. Yep. Better. All right, here it is, the finished product. We got the shop most of the way put back together. We've got a pallet worth of stuff that needs to go out to the container. R2 chilling. Not sure exactly where we're gonna put it. Probably here, stack the tires on the pallet, shove it in the corner. But this is all the cars that were in here having each lift spot taken up. Car on the lift, car under, car on the lift, car under. And this is all the stuff that was back here, and we now have more room to the lifts, and no car under this one, no cars at all on that one. So it's literally all the same stuff, but a lot more efficient use of space. And man, does it look cool to see that thing. Every time I walk into the shop now, it makes me happy, puts a smile on my face. It's like a showcase for the cars.
It's a centerpiece.
Yeah, literally. But yeah, no, and this is without even the loft. So the lofts on both sides are gonna really give us a lot more storage. So the plan is we're gonna build a loft on each side of the lift. Now, originally one of the ideas with getting this lift and doing all of this way was that we could get heavy stuff up onto the loft by using the lift as essentially an elevator. Now, we don't so much need that feature anymore because of R2, but if we wanted to, we could. So, you know, if it's something that we didn't wanna risk lifting up with R2, we could put it on the lift, bring it up, and move it over to the loft. So yeah, the plan is loft on this side, loft on that side. This side, ideally we'll have a spiral staircase, boom, up to the loft, and this will be shelves, small parts like that, but then also a hangout area. I wanna put the simulator up there, I wanna put a couch up there, have that as kind of the hangout spot. I've always kind of dreamed of that Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift style where you're looking out over the shop, you know, and you see the cars out here, and then also have the cars next to you, which is gonna be a wild feeling to be sitting on a loft and have a car right next to you. So that'd be more of like the hangout spot, probably maybe add a small mini split for up there since it's a little warmer up there. And then this be more of the big bulky items storage stuff where we just take things up with R2, boom, you know, a pallet of tires, whatever, put them up there. We can cross over from the other one, but that way we don't have two staircases. That's the rough game plan. But we have the tools now, the capability. We have this done, which is the centerpiece. This is needed to go up first. And we now have this to build the loft. That was really my biggest hang up with building the loft, is I was trying to come up with a way we could do it without using any equipment. But now we have equipment, so we can just use the equipment to build it. So yeah, between that and then the other plan is to build a lean-to out back. We have the roof panels already. They've been sitting out there for a while. So we're gonna build a 18 by 30 concrete pad, lean-to out the back. And then one of the benefits of this lift is we can enter either way. So we could bring cars in from there and basically, you know, block this whole area off if we wanted to. But the idea for there is just outside storage, cars, lawnmower, things like that, maybe a pallet racking with big bulky stuff. So between that and the loft, we should really open up ourselves a lot of storage, be able to reorganize the container, all good things. But this was step one, and I'm very, very excited to A, have it done, but B, just have it. It's every bit as cool as I imagined. What do you think?
It's awesome. It was definitely a fun, big project.
Yeah, it was a big project. It took us a while to build this thing, but we took our time, we made sure we did it right, and it's up. It's so cool. I can't get over it. So anyway, this video's gone on long enough. We've been working on this project for a while. It was one of those that, anyway, I'm gonna end it here. So I do wanna say thank you for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and that I sure hope I'll get to see you next time. Goodbye.